What computer specs do you need to run Descript? The short answer is the best ones that your budget allows. But let's get into it. Descript has two versions. There is a version that runs in your browser, known as the web version, and there is an app version that you download to your computer. Both versions are pretty much identical in terms of user interface, and they both have nearly all of the same features. Both are available to all users, so it's not like you have to pick one or upgrade in order to get access to one or the other. But the app version has all of Descript's capabilities, and it tends to have fewer errors, while the web version is a bit more limited and a bit more likely to have errors. They even say that it's in beta version. So because of that, I always recommend that people use the desktop app version if you can. However, there's a few exceptions where the web version will be better. The times where the web version is better is, number one, if you're not on a Windows or Mac computer. I've had students who use Linux, or even in one case, an iPad, and for them, there is no app option. The Descript app is only available on Windows and Mac. So if you're on an uncommon operating system, you will have to use the browser. You don't have a choice. And number two, the second case where I recommend the app version is if you have really poor performance from the desktop app. Maybe your computer is a bit old or underpowered. In that case, you will actually benefit from the web version because it uses Descript's servers to handle the processing versus your local computer chip. Okay, so let's say you don't fit into one of those previous two categories, or you're looking to buy a new machine and you need guidance on what to get. I don't want to offend anyone's tribe and advocate that you get a Mac over Windows or vice versa, because whichever one you pick, Descript works great on both. But I will let you know, I personally use a Mac, and the majority of my Descript use has been on a Mac. So that's where I'll start. Feel free to use the chapter markers in the description to skip ahead to the Windows recommendations if that's what you're looking for. For Mac, Apple Silicon works amazingly well with Descript. In a pinch, I have edited using my iPad Pro, which has an M1 chip, but I mostly use a base model 2022 MacBook Air with an M2 chip. And both the iPad and my MacBook Air handle Descript without issue. The MacBook Air, again, it's the base model. It's the cheapest one in the Apple lineup. So no matter which MacBook you pick, you will be fine. Now, I will say, because I only have 8 gigabytes of RAM on my MacBook Air, there are times where if I'm editing long videos in 4K, I need to close background applications in order to prioritize Descript. So I recommend, based on your uses, if you're running other apps, especially memory intensive ones, that you go ahead and get a 16 gigabyte or ideally 32 gigabytes of RAM. And this will also future-proof you and make sure you have plenty of RAM to use well into the future. But in summary, if you get a computer with the latest Apple Silicon, I'm talking an M2 or M3, those will handle Descript really well. You can't go wrong with those. For Windows, it gets a bit more complicated. There are a lot more configurations and chipsets out there, but Descript as a company recommends you have a 7th generation or newer Intel CPU, or if you're on an AMD processor, AMD chip, a 3000 series or newer. Now, that's at a minimum. I recommend if you're shopping for a new machine, you look for 14th generation Intel chips for your Windows computer. That's the latest generation at the time that I record this. And by getting the latest, you're going to future-proof yourself and get something that lasts for the longest amount of time and gives you the best performance. For RAM, opt for 16 gigabytes or higher. So that is my recommendation for Windows users. Now, I'm gonna go into recommendations for all users regardless of operating system. First, concerning hard drive, it doesn't really matter as long as you have at least 20 gigabytes free. If you have less than 20 gigabytes free, some weird errors can happen. For example, when you're screen recording and your hard drive is close to full, I've seen it end your recording early while you're in the middle of it, and then you end up losing the whole thing. So be very careful of that. There's a guy here on YouTube named Christy Kodovan who makes great Descript tutorials, and he made one about how to uninstall and reinstall Descript, which is something that I personally do about every 3 months in order to keep my hard drive clean, in order to keep it at a minimum. So I'll leave a link to that video in the description. And shout out to Christy for that. But second, no matter what operating system you're on, I recommend you have it updated to the latest version. So that means Windows 11 and Mac OS 14 respectively at the time that I record this, and you'll just get the best results that way. Third, the faster your internet, the better. Descript relies heavily on the internet for almost every function. So if you have anything less than 100 megabits per second, your performance will probably suffer. Ideally, you get internet over 300 megabits per second, and things will run really, really smoothly for you. In summary, there are a few specifications that you don't want to drop below. So get the best machine that your budget allows for. This will give you the fastest and smoothest Descript experience while future-proofing you with a machine you can use many years into the future. If you have questions or specific use cases or unusual considerations, leave them in the comments and I'll give you my opinion.